Hello, so I'm quite excited for today's video because I'm going to talk about colour scheme for my junk journal, which I've never done before. Normally I just do whatever I like, and I probably will just do whatever I like, to be honest, but I thought I'd try sticking to sort of like a basic colour scheme, like a colour palette. So I want to talk about how I kind of came up with one, which is really not that complicated, but it feels complicated for me because I tend to change my mind so often because there's so many colours available. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the palette and the colours and how, like, playing with paints and things. And then the bit that I'm super excited about is I'm going to actually start putting some paint on the paper. So the papers that I cut out for the pages in my journal, at the moment they're just blank, completely blank watercolour, thick watercolour paper. And the plan is to get my paints out, and I'm going to probably go with gouache. It was either gouache or watercolour, for reasons I'll explain later, but either gouache or watercolour. I think I'm probably going to go gouache because I bought a lot of new gouache paints earlier in the year to play with. And I'm going to sort of prep some pages today, so probably do a bit of painting and do a bit of maybe doodling on top. I'm not sure how much I'll get done, but I'm going to film everything and hopefully get a video out to you ASAP. Right then, let's take a look. Okay, so right at the beginning, when I was starting to think about my journal for this year, I just went on Pinterest, chose some image I liked with some sort of colour schemes that I liked, and I used Photoshop to kind of extract the colours, play around with them, and I came up with this sort of colour scheme of obviously a red and a green because it's Christmassy, and I like this sort of like navy, very dark Prussian blue, and then I added in a gold and a pink for like highlights. Now, the whole point of doing a colour palette for me isn't, like, I'm not trying to be strict with myself, I'm not trying to limit myself, it's just because it makes it easier when I'm doing anything, like when I'm designing anything, if I'm designing stickers or if I'm doing some sort of labels, it's easier for me just to have the palette ready and I can just grab that colour and use it, not spend time trying to choose the perfect colour or trying to choose which red to use every single time I do something. So that was like one of the first things I did this year, was to make that colour palette. And you obviously don't have to do this, but I find it's quite a fun thing to do, to kind of play around with colours and see which ones match and which ones you like in combination. I mean, you don't have to do a traditional red and green, you could do like a pink or purpley Christmas. But yeah, so these are the ones I thought I would kind of have as a guide, let's say. And the other thing I wanted to do this year was work with like more paint on the page rather than just scrapbooking and sticking. So I thought, well, okay, what kind of paint could I use? Now, paint generally, there's three main types. There's watercolour, there's acrylic, and there's gouache. Now, there is something called acrylic gouache or acrylic gouache, but to me it's basically acrylic, so I'm kind of not going to talk about that here. But basically, if you use acrylic paint, when you put it on a palette, if you let it dry, that's it, you can't use it again, it sets hard. Whereas watercolour and gouache, when you put it on a palette, you can reactivate it with water. So I thought, well, that'd be quite useful. I can set up a palette with the colours in, and then I can just reactivate them with water. So I bought a few paints and I started playing around, and I just had like trying to get the colours that I liked and making notes about the mixing. So, I mean, I hope I can understand this, but I was making notes, so the next time I come to mix the paints, I know how much I need of each, or like which colours at least to mix together. So I just did that, and I took this out with me, so I punched holes in and I put the ring through so that I could just shove it in my bag, and if I did go out to like buy anything, like any stickers or washi tapes, which actually in the end I didn't really, but I did take it out with me just in case I needed the colour reference. But yeah, so that was like working on designing a palette, and then I was kind of just playing around with the gouache to see what the colours looked like on the page altogether once I had worked out how to mix them. So I just kind of played around with paint and came up with this, and I do like this kind of balance of the red and the green with a little bit of the blue. There's a lot of blue on here, but that's because I just enjoyed using the colour. But actually for the album, maybe I won't use so much, or maybe I will, who cares, I don't know, let's see what happens. But yeah, basically played around with the paint for a little bit on paper just to kind of get a feel for them. And then once I had my colours, and incidentally, let me just show you this. This is the advent calendar I have with the little gnomes. And I realised that the colours actually match here as well. They're the same sort of tones. So that blue is the same as this. So I've obviously been influenced by that. Nice Christmassy colours. So yeah, once I had my palette, it meant if I did anything, like I made these labels, I just picked up that colour from Photoshop and I could use them. So this red, this blue and this green all match my colour scheme. And I bought some pre-made, someone else designed ephemera, and that kind of fits in with the colour scheme too. I mean, not perfectly, but it doesn't matter, does it? And then I did these like sort of Tyrrell tape illustrations, and I tried to use the same colours. These are actually done using alcohol marker, just drew a rectangle of alcohol marker, and then I used white gel pens and glitter gel pens on top just to do the pattern. I was in an alcohol marker kind of mood, so I did that. And the colours aren't quite the same, but I was a bit more limited with the markers. So yeah, I feel like I've got like a loose, relaxed kind of colour scheme going, and we'll see how it comes across in the album really. But as I said before, I kind of do these things experimentally. I'm not making myself rules, and I'm not going to be strict about sticking to them. I'm just kind of seeing what it's like to do a junk journal with a slight colour scheme to it, basically. So the next thing I want to do, which I'm going to do today, is I'm going to mix up my colours because I only have red in my palette at the moment. So this, if I reactivate that with water, I think I've got a brush pen. So this is hard now. Yeah, this has been there for a few weeks actually. But this is a Tombow water brush that's got water in, and if I just go like this, there we go, you can use the paint again. So gouache is really, really fun in that way, and obviously watercolour does this too. You can just reuse it. You don't have to sit for hours remixing all your colours. So now I have like, just need to check the red is the one I want. Yeah, it's a really lovely sort of slightly orangey, Christmassy red. So I'm happy with that. Yeah, I need to grab some more palettes and make up the other colours. Okay, so I've got my palettes already. So there wasn't actually that much mixing to do, to be honest, because what had happened was, because I went to the shop when I bought the paints, and I had my little colour card with me. When I was choosing the colour paints to buy, I actually got some fairly close matches. I mean, gouache seems to come in quite a good combination, a good range of colours. I managed to get this set really cheap, bargainer, second hand. How many? I can't remember how many. So you can see there's quite a few nice colours in there. But then I went to the shop myself with my little palette card and chose the ones that I thought might be good for my colour scheme. So the red here is made up mostly of flame red, but I did put a little bit of this Naples yellow in. So it's slightly orangey red anyway, and then a bit more yellow added in. The yellow colour was basically almost entirely Naples yellow, but this time with a tiny dash of flame red, so almost like the opposite balance of these two. And the pink I just made by adding white to this one. So that made my pink. What do we got? The blue. So the blue, I'd bought this one, peacock blue, thinking it would be a good max, but it's quite bright. You can kind of see it here in the middle, although it's coming up a lot sort of, okay, it's different on camera, but basically it was too bright, so I was adding in, like, trying in different greens just to kind of bring it more turquoisey, I suppose. And in the end I settled with peacock blue with olive green, which is this one. I actually added in a dash of white, which you can do with gouache, to kind of make them, to give them a sort of a, well, I suppose a chalkier look.
And then the green was moss green, although I did accidentally use a little bit of olive green. So there is a dash in there, but it was almost entirely perfectly moss green is what I wanted. So these are Holbein Artist Gouache, which I think is a Japanese brand, Holbein. I'm not sure. But yeah, so that's my colour palette ready. So even if they dry, as I said, I can reactivate them. And I was using, these are actually offcuts from the edges of my journal pages. When I cut them all up, I had like these random sections left. So yeah, because I think I said in my previous video I just chopped some pages in half, but apparently I didn't. There was some left. So I didn't chop them in half. But these will come in handy doing like my tester sheets. And then this was like the colours once I'd finally decided they worked, which I think isn't a bad match for what's on here. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to have lunch now, and then when I come back, I'm going to start painting the pages. Okay, I'm back from my lunch, and I'm going to make a start with painting the pages. So I've got everything assembled here. I've got my paint ready, and my palette just for reference, paintbrushes, water. I have two glasses for water, one for dirty paint water and one for clean water. I use a little sort of squeezy thing to get paint out to wet the palette, so I've got one of those. I've got my paint water, so I better put that out now. Ready. And I've also collected a few bits to show you what my idea is, basically, where I'm going to start today. So when I was thinking about how I was going to use paint more in my journal this year, I just kind of had to play around in my sketchbook with just like painting pages and doodling on them, and I came up with these this kind of thing, and I was thinking perhaps I could do something like this on the pages this year. So this one, that's actually watercolour, I think. So all I did was like paint a rectangle of blue, and then I used this pen, which is a Tachikawa Pure White 10. I don't know if you can get these anywhere except here, but in Japan. But it's quite a good pen for doing white on top of dark colours. So I just kind of doodled around the edges with it, and I thought that was quite a fun sort of effect. These ones were actually the gouache paint, so the red paint you can see in the palette here. So this one I just did a loop, and then I drew on it with the white pen, and also with, I think, one of the, which ones are these? The Hybrid Dual Metallic Dual by Pentel. These you can definitely get on Amazon, or, well, at other pen shops, I'm sure, not just Amazon. Outside of Japan, I'm pretty sure you can get these. They're really good. They're very sort of juicy and sparkly. So I got those ready just to kind of show you what I mean. And for this one, I stuck the little two elf figures are just drawn up. They're actually just drawn on plain printer paper, and I cut them out and stuck them on. So this was just kind of an experiment to see how I could work with paint on a page. So I'm thinking I can paint the page, I can do like the doodling on top with pen, and then obviously I can stick other things on top. So these are sort of my samples to kind of explain where I'm going with this. So I'll just put those aside for now, and I just want to show you what gouache is like. I'm by no means an expert with gouache. I only really started using them a few months ago, and I've only done it like 3 times. But basically, gouache paint reactivates with water, like I said before, but also when you put it on the paper, it also sits on top of the surface a bit more. Watercolour tends to sink in, I think. It's less like, you can't reactivate it so well on paper. Gouache, obviously depending on how thick the paint is, can reactivate on the page, on the paper. That's probably not true about watercolour, because I'm sure you can get watercolour palettes that are on paper, so they can reactivate. But anyway, ignore that. I'm just going to tell you what I know about gouache. Basically, you can apply a layer of paint on top without it kind of mixing and merging. It is possible to do that, but then if you sort of work into, like if you get a light colour and you work into it with like a wet paint, it does also reactivate underneath. So it sort of depends on it depends on how watery your paint is and how much you sort of rub the paintbrush, whether or not your paint sits on top nicely or whether it blends nicely. So I'm just going to show you an example of that now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a light colour on top of dark so that it's nice and obvious. So if I just get some of the very light pink I have over here, use my dropper to put the water onto the paint so I'm not constantly getting my water dirty. And this isn't, it's quite a thin paint, this particular pink that I've mixed up. It feels like there's not that much pigment in compared to the others, but it will still, I think, work quite well. So if I just dab this on top, but quite a light touch without rubbing or anything like that, you can see it will sit on top. So you can do detail on top, but as soon as you start working it in, you can see it starts to mix in the colour a bit more. Let me just try that with a sort of a thicker colour, perhaps the yellow, so you can see it sitting on top a bit better. Hang on, let's get some of the yellow. Yeah, that's a bit better. That's a nice sort of a thicker consistency. So once again, if I just dot lightly, gently, and you can, if it's quite a thick paint, you can actually paint on top as well without it sort of smudging the paint underneath. So you can do that, but also, as again, if you want to, if you sort of rub into it a bit more, and squish it around a bit, you can see it's starting to take on the blue underneath there, and it's sort of changing the colour a little bit. I need a bit of wet on there, hang on. And obviously if you add water, it blends quicker. So you can, once you've got your paint on the page, you can also change the colour. So if you say you did something one colour and you're like, oh, I don't like that, I need it to be a bit more green, you can go in with a paint on top, paint over it, or blend it in to make it the colour that you want, basically. So here I could completely change this colour here if I wanted to, and make it more of a greeny rather than a blue. So you have those two options with gouache, which is quite fun. If a light touch, you can put it on top, or you can also sort of blend on the page. So that was kind of my reason for having a go with gouache really this year, because I haven't used them. I probably had a play around when I was a kid with my mum's gouache, but never properly tried doing anything particularly with them. I have no idea what brushes you're supposed to use, and I don't even know what these are. These are just a random selection of brushes that I got from different shops. So that's all I can tell you. So yes, that is what I'm going to do. I can put the paint on top of paint, or I can do the pen on top. And I thought I'd just have a quick pen test here just to check. So this is the Tachikawa, the white gel pen. So it's kind of the same theory. If you just do it lightly, you can do it, but I expect if I rubbed in like that, yeah, you can see it does change the colour. But if you do light, it'll sit on top fine. And then these are the Pentel Dual Metallics, and these, I believe, go on nicely. Yeah, absolutely fine. Nice and clear. I will show you a close-up in a minute so you can see what I'm talking about. That's nice, isn't it? The green on top of the green. Whew. Okay, so there's quite a few colours in that selection. I won't do them all in that collection. And then the other gel pen I own is the Pilot Juice Ups, which are super fine. I bought these in a point, not point, it just says 0.4, which I assume is 0.4. Yes, I got a gold, a silver and a white. These are very fine though, so I'm not confident these will make much headway. I think they might just sort of make a groove through the paint. Oh, this one's not even working. Yeah, it's a little bit sort of tricky. It feels like I'm more scratching a line into the paint. Oh, the silver's not too bad. So perhaps for very small details, these would work with the silver, the gold. I mean this. Ah, there we go. You probably can't see a thing, I do apologise. I'll show you in a second. Okay, so here we are. So this is the gouache on gouache here. So you can see it's sitting on top, mixing in, sitting on top, mixing in. And then these are the pens. So that one is the Tachikawa pen at the bottom, which as you can see, you can sort of blend in like a paint. And these are the Pentel, what are they called? Pentel dual something or other, dual metallics. These are the Pentel dual metallics here, I just did a couple. And then these very fine ones are the Pilot pens, what are they called? Pilot juice ups. So they kind of work. The silver and the gold works quite well, I think. Okay, so pens aside, because I'm not going to do the pens until later, or the decoration until later. So I have got my pages here. So the plan is to just take a page, plop some paint on it. I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know how many, but sort of thinking in terms of I need space to write, perhaps, a bit of journaling. So I'm not going to cover the whole thing in paint. Perhaps the borders, perhaps a few blobs. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm just going to see how it goes, really. And I have, I'd say I have like 4 main colours I could use. The red, the yellow, the blue and the green. The pink, I could possibly, actually no, I could do some nice pinky borders. So say if I've got 5 colours I'm going to just plonk on today. So perhaps if I divide this, to help with being indecisive, if I divide this into 5 piles, divide it into 5 and then do the same amount for each colour, that might help me crack through them. Okay, so I found one piece that already had paint on, so I'm going to count that as done. That was just because that was the page in my sketchbook that I'd used before I cut it up. So that's that one done. So remaining, I've got 3 piles of 4 and 2 of 5. So I'm going to do red and green on the 2 where I have 5 sheets, because I might as well. Yeah, and now I don't know if I'm going to do 2-sided. I suppose I will, but perhaps, well, I'll see how I go today. Perhaps if I paint all one side today, and then if I feel like it, I can always do the other side another time. Okay, so I'm going to start, and I'm going to start with red, and I'll probably speed the video up a little bit, and I'll come back and talk to you at the end.
Okay, so I'm just switching to voiceover for this part, just to kind of explain my thought process behind which shapes I painted quickly for you. So I suppose I was thinking in terms of frames around the page, because I know from my sketchbook play earlier on in the year that they're quite fun to sort of make cute little Christmassy frames. So circular frames, and this is kind of like a corner frames, I suppose you'd call it. I can sort of decorate into the red corners and then use the centre area for everything else, I'm thinking, on this one. Circles are always good to draw, just because they're just nice to paint, actually, to be honest. They just feel nice to do. I don't know how I would use that. Maybe make them into baubles or something. Could be fun. Stripes I'm doing, I suppose, because Christmas and candy canes and stripes and things, but also I thought it might be interesting to have, I don't know, it's just a different shape to play with, I suppose. Maybe journaling across, or like little rows of photos or something, I'm not sure. And again, I'm doing circles. I don't know, what could this be? Snowballs? I've no idea. To be perfectly honest, I'm just doing them because I like drawing them. Yeah, I suppose I think ideas will just come to me as I'm going, basically. I expect when I get the pen out and start doodling into the red bits, something useful will occur to me. And then hearts, I suppose, because Christmas is a really good opportunity to kind of spend more time doing things together with my son. Obviously, we do things together, but I suppose I set more time aside near Christmas to do it, perhaps, and I kind of plan more activities and things. So I'm sure the hearts will come in handy for some nice things I'll do with him. Christmas tree, because I got the green paint now. I've seen some really beautiful junk journals or journals where there's like a Christmas tree in the centre of the page and journaling up the middle. So I thought I'd try that one. Little trees are always good for Christmas, little mini trees like in a forest. So just simply drawing triangles at one side. I didn't want to fill the whole page with the triangles because it's sort of an awkward shape to kind of work around with everything else. But I thought I'll just do a few up and down one side and see what happens with that one. Okay, so really all I'm doing when I'm painting these things is just doing the first thing that comes to mind, getting a new page, getting the paint, and just thinking, what's, the first shape that comes into my head and just plonking it on the page and not overthinking. Because if I sat and tried to plan how many pages and what I was going to do on each one, it would just be ridiculous. I think it'd be overkill. Best thing to do is just play around and just put whatever occurs to me on the page, basically. And I thought I'd better do some holly, because I do like a good sort of holly decoration. Well, I miss holly. I mean, you can buy holly here, but it doesn't seem to like the climate where we live. And then I thought I should do like a snowy hill scene with a night sky again. So obviously the white of the paper can be the snowy hill, and then I just have to paint in the sky. Might be quite useful. I mean, we're not going to get snow here. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get any snow. We do get snow here sometimes, but it's more at the beginning of the year, like February, I think is probably the coldest. January, February, the coldest months here. And it doesn't often snow. Okay, so the next colour up is the pink. So I'm not going to do so many pages of the pink because it's not such a strong colour, but I want to just do it because it may turn out to be nice. So I figure I'd just do like a light border around the page, pink border, in case that suits one of my days. I'm finding there's like a difference in texture between one paint and another. I know when I squeezed the green out onto the palette, a lot of oil came out of the tube as well, and that changed up the texture. So I don't know whether that paint tube has been sitting still for too long and perhaps the oil's risen to the top. I'm not sure how it works, but so the green was kind of uncomfortable to paint with, actually, to be honest. But the pink and the yellow are actually really, they go on the page really nicely. I don't know why that is. I guess colours are made of different pigments, aren't they? So some pigments maybe are smoother or have a different texture. Just drawing like an oval on that one. I was getting running out of ideas by this point, so just went for simple shapes really. So ovals and just colouring in one corner. It doesn't like, even if there's not much on there, just having one thing just sort of hopefully will start me off with, placing things on the page. So my first thought with yellow is to do like Christmassy stars, and they're actually quite hard to paint to get them like lining up with all the points the same. So I had to go around quite a few times to kind of even it out a bit, but I think I got there in the end. And I thought maybe I'd do a couple of small ones. And I do like that effect of just the lines, but I did decide to colour it in because I know I'm going to want to doodle into them and work into them.
Okay, so I've done all the first set of painting. So there's 23 pages down there that have just got some random shapes, some random blobs on them in the colour scheme I chose. So now I'm trying to think, should I turn over the pages and do the second side? Or will I leave them blank? I think I'm probably going to turn them over and do the second side. It's really tempting to leave them blank, but
I kind of want to take the pressure off so that during December I'm not faced with too many, well, any blank sheets basically. So yeah, I think I'm going to flip them over, and if I do it in such a way as to not repeat colours, that might work. Maybe I'm just going to do random. I could probably sit here and think it out and do some maths and be like, if I do blue on the back of red, blah, blah, but I'm not going to do that, am I? I think I'm just going to just paint them because I haven't got time and who cares. So, in conclusion, I'm going to flip them all over in a random order and I'm just going to paint random colour on the back. Okay, and that's the other side all painted. I kind of did the same balance of colours. I tried to kind of vary the shapes a bit more. There's a few I've done repeats of, but that's because I know I like doing them, or some of them I have a good idea for what I want to do and I want to have extra just in case it goes wrong the first time. Yeah, so all those sheets are now double painted basically. So I'm at a funny angle at the end of the video because I just want to explain a few things about why I've done what I did and then talk about what's next. So all I've done, as you saw, is just plonk shapes on pages, and I haven't been like too precious about what shapes. I haven't planned anything. I haven't drawn anything out with pencil, or if it's wonky, and it doesn't matter because I'm going to probably layer it up with loads of other random things, doodling and sticking stuff on. Some of them might get completely obscured. I might just stick like paper over the top. So it really doesn't matter at this stage whether they're like perfect or even or anything like that. And I don't mind. Like, I mean, for example, this one I did last, I think, some blobs, and then for some reason I've got a really random small one, but it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, if you bought this in a shop as a, not that you'd buy this in a shop, but if you bought like paper, scrapbook paper for a journal in a shop, yeah, you'd expect perhaps it would also be evenly spaced, but for my purposes I'm just doing this for myself, and so I'm just doing it any old way, and that's not like some kind of way of excusing me doing it imperfectly. I'm not saying it because of that. I'm just saying it because I think it's important to remember, if you're going to do Christmas journal, junk journal, that it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. It really doesn't matter. Just do it and see what happens. And there's always next year. Whatever I do this year, I'm probably not going to do again next year. I mean, there may be something that comes out of it that makes me think, oh, that was really fun. I really enjoyed that technique. I'll do that again. But probably I'll go, oh, I've tried that and now I'll do something different. Just enjoy it, just do whatever. So, got a bit philosophical there, didn't I? Basically, speaking about what I've actually done, I've painted both sides of the paper, and I think that's probably all I'm going to do on the actual pages before December, partly because there's only a few days left. Also because if I start trying to add things, it's too much. Like, I feel like this kind of amount of stuff is probably enough for me to not look at a blank white page and go, oh my lord, what am I going to do today? Like, it's basically something on there, there's a shape on there, there's a colour on there, and that's enough to get me started, I hope. So I'm just looking around as if I'm going to see something to remind me of what I was going to say. Oh yeah, I was going to say, yeah, so the plan is obviously when I come to do the actual journaling on the days is to do extra bits on top of it. So for example, if I took this one, I would, depending, if I've got loads of photos for the day, I might put the photos along the bottom. If I've only got one, I could put it in the middle. If I don't have any photos, I could journal in the middle, or I could stick something there or whatever. But all of this kind of detail is just going to have to come later, really. That is enough for me, a circle on a page, to kind of give me a starting point, I hope. So in terms of junk journal techniques, I know last year I did loads of like pockets and flaps and envelopes and pull-outs and stuff. I do want to do that again. I do, because they're really fun. I don't know how it's going to work in terms of these painted pages, but I do want to do them because they were fun. It's really nice to make things out of paper, envelopes and pockety things. So that's basically the last thing I'm going to do before kickoff. So I have one day tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. And I do have Monday as well, but I might need that for something else. So next video is going to be
probably envelopes and possibly journal cards to go in them. I don't know how many I'm going to be able to like get done in a day, but that's going to be the next video. So if you've made it to the end through all my waffling, thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next video. Okay, bye.